Question 1. Focusing specifically on the process of establishing control over a crime scene involving a malfunctioning HVAC unit believed to have contributed to a chemical exposure, what is the most appropriate action for crime scene technician Amelia upon arrival? A. Immediately begin sampling air near the HVAC vents using a portable gas detector. B. Document the system status but wait for hazardous materials clearance before approaching. C. Shut down the HVAC system to prevent further spread of contaminants without documentation. D. Delegate the HVAC assessment to the building's maintenance staff for speed. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. Before interacting with any suspected hazardous HVAC-related crime scene, the technician must ensure the area is cleared for safety by qualified hazmat personnel. OSHA 1910.120. Immediate documentation is essential, but entry without clearance violates safety protocols and legal standards. Shutting down the system, as in option C, without prior documentation risks spoliation. Evidence. Delegating tasks to unqualified personnel. Option D risks chain of custody and legal admissibility. Sampling prior to ensuring scene safety. Option A can endanger personnel. Question 2. By evaluating HVAC filters from a building where a decomposing body was discovered, what underlying forensic principle explains the usefulness of examining these filters? A. Filters retain trace DNA that can link a suspect to the crime. B. Filters can reveal biological decomposition markers useful in time of death estimation. C. Filters trap refrigerant particles that indicate HVAC tampering. D. Filters store heat signatures from occupants that can indicate movement. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. HVAC filters can accumulate airborne biological matter associated with decomposition, volatile organic compounds and microbial markers, which can be used to infer the post-mortem interval PMI. This is especially relevant in closed environments. Option A overstates the retention of viable DNA. Option C misrepresents refrigerant behavior, as refrigerant gases would not be filtered this way. Option D confuses thermal imaging with physical evidence. Question 3. As demonstrated by technician Gregory's handling of refrigerant leak evidence in homicide investigation, what step ensures both preservation of material and legal admissibility? A. Photographing the leaking coil and logging the model number. B. Recharging the system to identify the leak point for testing. C. Capturing the leaked refrigerant into sample bottle using proper PPE. D. Tagging the refrigerant tank only after confirming refrigerant type via pressure gauges. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. Collecting leaked refrigerant as physical evidence must be done using industry-approved containment tools and with PPE per EPA Section 608 Anatomy. Photographs. Option A and identification are part of documentation but not physical evidence collection. Recharging the system. B is unsafe and can alter the crime scene. Gauging the tank. D doesn't directly preserve the leaked refrigerant. Forensic testing. Question 4. Taking into account ethical concerns in HVACR forensic practices, which of the following actions by technician Lilo would most clearly violate professional ethical standards? A. Discussing findings only with law enforcement officers on the case. B. Noting undocumented modifications in her report even if they may be unrelated. C. Accepting a side contract from the building owner to investigate damage causes. D. Recommending further lab testing for ambiguous filter contents. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. Accepting compensation or work outside the scope of the official investigation. Option C. Poses a serious conflict of interest, violating ESCODLAB Code of Ethics and NFPA 1033 standards. Communicating with law enforcement and providing detailed reports. B and D are in line with professional obligations provided the technician maintains impartiality. Question 5. When analyzing A. Distribution patterns in a duct system that may have transported toxic chemicals throughout a crime scene, what HVAC concept is critical to understanding evidence dispersal? A. The refrigeration cycle's superheat value. B. Static pressure differences between zones. C. The SEER rating of the air conditioner. D. Compressor startup amperage fluctuations. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. Static pressure imbalances across zones determine airflow direction, which can move airborne contaminants. Option A is relevant to system efficiency, not air movement. C relates to energy efficiency, and D is diagnostic for electrical health, not airflow. Understanding pressure differentials helps forensic technicians map chemical dispersal routes. Question 6. The implications of improper PPE usage during the inspection of a mold-contaminated HVAC system are best demonstrated in which of the following scenarios? A. Technician Omar wears gloves and safety glasses while testing refrigerant pressure. B. Technician Emma enters an attic crawlspace with only a paper dust mask. C. Technician Carlos uses an SCBA and Tyvek suit while handling a chemical leak. D. Technician Lisa inspects filters outdoors with nitrile gloves and no respirator. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. Mold spores in enclosed areas like attics require NIOSH-approved respirators, not basic dust masks. Entering with inadequate PPE. B. Risks exposure to biological hazards, violating OSHA and CDC guidelines. Option C is correct. PPE usage for chemical hazards. A and D offer some protection, but not for mold-specific risks in enclosed spaces. Question 7. During the process of investigating a potential arson case involving HVAC ignition, what evidence from the system would most strongly support intentional tampering? A. Evidence of improper refrigerant line insulation. B. Missing electrical control board fuses with visible jumper wires. C. Disconnected condensate drain pan. D. Incorrectly sized blow motor capacitor. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. Jumper wires replacing fuses indicate intentional override of safety protocols, which is suspicious in arson. This suggests bypassing thermal cutoffs, a known tactic to induce overheating or electrical fire. Option A may show poor installation but not criminal intent. C and D are maintenance errors but not direct arson indicators. Question 8. Through careful analysis of chain of custody logs, which of the following actions would most likely jeopardize admissibility of HVAC evidence? A. Storing a refrigerant sample in a double-sealed, labeled container. B. Having 2 technicians sign for transfer during shift change. C. Delaying logging the evidence transfer for 6 hours after system removal. D. Logging time, date, and condition in the crime scene report. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. Delays in logging evidence transfers violate chain of custody protocols, creating gaps that could lead to legal challenges on admissibility. Chain of custody must be continuous and contemporaneous per Atom in FPA 921 SS.6. Options A, B, and D follow proper evidence handling guidelines. Question 9. Among the various HVACR system components examined during forensic analysis, which component provides the most reliable trace evidence of airborne particulate presence? A. Condensate pump. B. Thermostat housing. C. Return air duct interior. D. Suction line accumulator. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. Return air ducts accumulate particulates over time, especially in filters and duct walls, making them prime for trace evidence. Thermostat housings. B. Are mostly clean surfaces. Accumulators. D. Deal with refrigerant, not air particulates. Condensate pumps. They may carry microbial growth but not airborne particulates reliably. Question 10. When faced with suspected illegal modification of a residential HVAC system that is now a crime scene, which sign would best indicate code violation and potential tampering? A. Use of a high-efficiency filter in a residential air handler. B. Refrigerant-lined brazed joint lacking a service valve. C. Evidence of low-voltage thermostat wiring rerouted through attic junction box. D. Drain line connected to a plumbing clean-out with proper trap. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. Low-voltage wiring rerouted through concealed spaces like attic junctions can violate NEC Article 725 and suggest unauthorized or concealed modification, possibly for surveillance or sabotage. High-efficiency filters. A. Improperly trapped drain lines. D. Are allowable. Lack of service valve. B. May be poor practice but not clearly illegal or suspicious. Question 11. To better understand forensic HVAC evidence collection, consider technician role investigating a crime scene where a chemical agent is suspected to have been dispersed through the ventilation system. What is the most appropriate method for collecting airborne residue samples? A. Using a handheld VOC detector to log concentrations only. B. Wiping down external vents with dry cloths. C. Deploying sorbent tubes with a calibrated air sampling pump. D. Scraping dust samples directly into open containers. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. Sorbent tubes, when paired with calibrated air pumps, allow technicians to collect airborne contaminants accurately for later GCMS lab analysis. This method aligns with NIOSH method 2549 and ATIUM D. VOC detectors A. Only provide real-time readings and are non-evidentiary. Dry cloths B. Are not ideal for chemical residues, and scraping into open containers D. Risks contamination. Question 12. Contrary to popular belief, all refrigerants are not equally hazardous when investigating a contaminated HVACR system. Which of the following refrigerants requires the highest level of PPE and ventilation protocols during forensic sampling due to its decomposition into toxic byproducts when heated? A. R400 TINA. B. R134. C. R22. D. R123. Answer. Correct answer. D. Explanation. R123 decomposes into hydrogen fluoride and phosgene gas when exposed to heat or flame. Both highly toxic compounds. Proper PPE includes full-face respirators with acid gas cartridges and adequate ventilation. R400 TINA and R134 pose lower acute risks, and R22, now phased out, has ozone-depleting concerns but fewer immediate decomposition dangers. Question 13. From a practical standpoint, which sketching technique is most appropriate for documenting HVAC component locations in a multi-room building during a forensic investigation? A. Rough sketch with estimated distances and no reference points. B. Perspective sketch showing HVAC from one angle only. C. Exploded view to isolate internal HVAC parts. D. Floor plan sketch with fixed reference measurements. Answer. Correct answer. D. Explanation. Floor plan sketches with fixed reference points allow clear spatial relationships between HVAC components and structural elements. Critical for forensic reconstructions. Perspective sketches B and exploded views C are useful for later reports but not crime scene documentation. Rough sketches A are preliminary and should be supplemented with accurate scale. Question 14. When presented with a case involving unusual thermostat settings following a break-in, technician Farah is called to determine if tampering has occurred. Which sign most strongly indicates deliberate manipulation of controls? A. Thermostat settings aligned with manufacturer defaults. B. Evidence of recent software firmware update. C. Manual override history showing entries during the time of crime. D. Low battery warning displayed on screen. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. Override logs that match the crime's timeline suggest deliberate manual input, especially if they deviate from usual patterns. Many smart thermostats retain user interaction logs that are admissible digital evidence. Defaults A and firmware updates B can be automated. Low battery D may cause malfunctions but is not direct evidence of tampering. Question 15. According to recent studies, HVAC ducts may serve as a repository of trace evidence long after a crime has occurred. Which method best supports non-destructive examination of interior duct surfaces? A. Inserting an inspection camera with fiber optic illumination. B. Removing duct insulation and scraping inner walls. C. Drilling sampling ports in each duct segment. D. Removing entire duct runs for lab testing. Answer. Correct answer. A. Explanation. Fiber optic scopes allow real-time, non-destructive viewing of duct interiors for trace evidence. Is preserves scene integrity per ASTM and is consistent with non-destructive methodology principles. Removal. B. D. Risk scene contamination or disruption. Drilling. C. Introduces debris and alters the structure. Question 16. One might argue that forensic technicians should not rely solely on thermal imaging when evaluating HVAC systems at crime scenes. Why is this approach insufficient by itself? A. Thermal imaging cannot detect refrigerant flow blockages. B. Thermal imaging requires high ambient temperatures to function. C. It identifies only visible spectrum issues. D. It can only be used with pressurized systems. Answer. Correct answer. A. Explanation. Thermal imaging detects surface temperature changes but cannot confirm internal flow or refrigerant pressure. Essential for forensic HVAC evaluation, it complements but does not replace system gauges or diagnostic tools. Options B, C, and D reflect common misconceptions. The thermal imaging uses infrared, not visible light, and works in various temperatures. Question 17. The underlying principle of forensic HVAC analysis often hinges on understanding airflow. In a case where trace fibers are found only in a return duct, what conclusion is most consistent with airflow patterns? A. Fibers were deliberately planted in the duct post-event. B. Fibers were naturally drawn from the occupied space into the return. C. HVAC was off at the time of fiber dispersal. D. Supply ducts were not connected to the space. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. Return ducts draw air from occupied areas, carrying particulates like fibers toward the air handler. This supports passive transport rather than planting. A. Or system shutdown. C. Disconnected supply ducts. D. Would affect comfort but not fiber movement into returns. Question 18. During the process of writing a report for a crime involving refrigerant poisoning, which of the following report characteristics would best meet legal admissibility and expert witness standards? A. Using technical jargon to assert advanced expertise. B. Citing findings without stating methods of analysis. C. Clearly outlining chain of custody, methodology, and findings. D. Including speculative causes not supported by evidence. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. Legal admissibility under Daubert and Frey standards requires clearly documented methodology, reproducibility, and reliability of conclusions. Option C is aligned with Rule 702 of the Federal Rules of Evidence. Technical jargon. A. May obscure clarity. Omission of methods. B. In speculation. D. Risk disqualification of testimony. Question 19. A detailed analysis of an HVAC system in a clandestine drug lab reveals visible crystalline deposits in the supply duct insulation. What is the most appropriate next step for the forensic HVAC technician? A. Cut out the insulation and store it in standard plastic bags. B. Photograph the residue but leave it in place. C. Collect a sample using gloves and store in tamper-evident containers. D. Vacuum the duct interior to prevent further contamination. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. Collecting physical evidence such as residues must follow chain of custody and biohazard chemical safety protocols. Tamper-evident containers prevent contamination and preserve admissibility. Cutting insulation A without proper containers risks contamination, leaving it. B. Fails to secure evidence, and vacuuming D. destroys trace material. Question 20. The central argument for using specialized UV lights during HVAC crime scene investigations is best supported by which application? A. Detecting leaks from thermal expansion valves. B. Tracing fingerprint residue on HVAC grills. C. Identifying bodily fluids or chemical residues inside ducts. D. Measuring airflow in complex ventilation networks. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. UV light, especially alternate light sources or OWLs, helps detect biological or chemical residues like blood, semen, or illicit substances, especially on non-porous HVAC surfaces. This is standard forensic practice in contaminated environments. Thermal valves A and airflow D are unrelated. Fingerprints B require different techniques. Question 21. Within the framework of forensic investigation, Ista Patel is tasked with analyzing an HVAC compressor suspected to have been sabotaged. Which diagnostic approach most effectively distinguishes mechanical failure from intentional tampering? A. Measuring compressor amperage draw and comparing it to manufacturer specifications. B. Visual inspection of compressor casing for corrosion only. C. Checking refrigerant charge levels without opening the system. D. Replacing the compressor to test system operation. Answer. Correct answer, A. Explanation. Amperage draw indicates whether the compressor motor is operating within design limits or showing signs of electrical damage consistent with tampering. Visual inspection, B alone, is insufficient as corrosion can be unrelated. Checking refrigerant charge, C, is useful but does not differentiate failure cause. Replacing the compressor, D, destroys evidence and is inappropriate before forensic analysis. Question 22. Considering the evidence Lopez is collecting dust samples from an HVAC return duct in a suspected methamphetamine lab. What is the most critical factor she must observe to ensure the dust evidence is admissible in court? A. Use of clean, single-use sampling tools and proper labeling. B. Collecting samples only during peak ventilation hours. C. Sampling dust only from supply ducts to avoid contamination. D. Immediate vacuuming of the entire duct to collect maximum material. Answer. Correct answer, A. Explanation. Maintaining contamination control is crucial. Using clean, disposable tools and correct labeling preserves chain of custody and avoids cross-contamination. Sampling times. B. Do not affect admissibility. Supply ducts. C. Generally have less settled dust. Vacuuming entire ducts. D. Disrupts evidence context. Question 23. In the context of psychrometrics relevant to a decomposing body in an enclosed space, what HVAC condition most accelerates decomposition processes affecting forensic timelines? A. High relative humidity combined with warm temperature. B. Low relative humidity with high temperature. C. Constant low temperature and humidity. D. Frequent HVAC cycling causing fluctuating temperatures. Answer. Correct answer, A. Explanation. High humidity and warmth facilitate bacterial growth and enzymatic activity, accelerating decomposition and volatile compound release. Low humidity, B, desiccates tissues, slowing decay. Constant low temperature, C, preserves remains. Fluctuating temperatures, D, have variable effects, but generally slow microbial activity. Question 24. From the perspective of maintaining a proper chain of custody, which documentation practice is least acceptable when handling HVAC system evidence? A. Recording date, time, and signatures of every evidence transfer. B. Leaving evidence unsecured temporarily during shift change. C. Using tamper evidence seals on collected samples. D. Photographing evidence before packaging. Answer. Correct answer, B. Explanation. Unsecured evidence risks tampering and legal challenges. Chain of custody requires continuous control. Proper logging. A. Tamper seals. C. And photographs. D. Strengthen evidentiary integrity. Question 25. Throughout the course of a forensic HVAC inspection, technician Jasmine notes that the system's electrical control panel exhibits signs of wiring modifications inconsistent with installation standards. What is the most appropriate forensic conclusion? A. Wiring changes indicate routine maintenance and can be disregarded. B. Unauthorized modifications may indicate intentional tampering affecting system function. C. All electrical wiring should be replaced to restore system integrity. D. The modifications are irrelevant to forensic analysis. Answer. Correct answer, B. Explanation. Unauthorized wiring changes can alter system operation and might be used to mask tampering or sabotage, warranting further forensic investigation. Routine maintenance. A. Would be documented and authorized. Replacement. C. Destroys evidence. Ignoring. D. Risks missing critical forensic clues. Question 26. Given the circumstances, Chen must collect refrigerant samples suspected of containing chemical agents. Which safety protocol is essential during this procedure? A. Use standard gloves without respiratory protection. B. Employ full PPE including respirator, gloves, and eye protection. C. Collect samples outdoors without PPE due to ventilation. D. Handle refrigerant containers only after a 24-hour waiting period. Answer. Correct answer, B. Explanation. Refrigerants and their chemical agents pose inhalation and skin contact hazards. Full EPE is mandatory per OSHA HAZROPA standards and EPA refrigerant handling rules. Outdoor sampling without PPE. C. Is unsafe. Waiting periods. D. Are not standard protocol, and gloves alone are insufficient. Question 27. In what ways can detailed forensic sketching assist in legal proceedings involving HVAC-related crime scenes? A. It provides a non-biased visual record to corroborate witness testimony. B. It replaces the need for photographs and physical evidence collection. C. It allows creative interpretation of scene elements by the technician. D. It is primarily used for aesthetic courtroom presentations. Answer. Correct answer. A. Explanation. Sketches serve as objective, scaled visual aids complementing photographs and reports. They help juries and judges understand spatial relationships. They do not replace photographs. B. Allow creative license. C. Or serve purely aesthetic purposes. D. Question 20. Across different scenarios, what is a key reason for forensic HVAC technicians to use non-destructive examination techniques? First, A. To avoid contamination and preserve the integrity of the crime scene. B. To reduce investigation time by skipping detailed analysis. C. To limit the need for PPE during evidence collection. D. To prevent equipment damage only. Answer. Correct answer. A. Explanation. Preserving scene integrity is paramount to avoid evidence loss or contamination. Non-destructive techniques maintain original conditions, supporting admissibility. Time reduction, B, or PPE considerations, C, are secondary. Damage prevention, D, is important but not primary. Question 29. The fundamental question is how to differentiate between refrigerant leaks caused by system wear and deliberate sabotage. Which forensic indicator is most reliable? A. Corrosion patterns localized near suspected tampered areas. B. Generalized leaks at all joints and seals. C. Presence of foreign tool marks on refrigerant tubing. D. Low refrigerant pressure readings. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. Foreign tool marks, scratches, or punctures indicate mechanical intervention. Corrosion A and generalized leaks B usually indicate natural aging. Low pressure D is non-specific and can result from either cause. Question 30. In light of recent developments, Easton Ewan is reviewing HVAC documentation for a forensic report. Which documentation best supports the technician's conclusions in court? A. Detailed photographs, sketches, chain of custody logs, and analytical reports. B. Verbal notes taken during the scene inspection. C. Unverified third-party emails about system conditions. D. Maintenance manuals for the HVAC equipment only. Answer. Correct answer. A. Explanation. Comprehensive and verifiable documentation, including visual aids, custody records, and lab analyses, provides the strongest legal support. Verbal notes B. Lack reliability. Third-party emails C. May be hearsay. Manuals D. Are reference materials, not forensic evidence.